In this video, we're unpacking the brutal, unwritten rules of prison politics. We're discussing how racial realities dictate survival behind the walls, from subtle cues to overt power plays. We're exposing the intricate, often violent social structures that govern daily life and determine who thrives and who falls, based on their skin color inside a prison. Man, this is deep. You ain't gonna wanna miss it. The reality is, even though the rest of the world, especially the Western world, is fighting for equality in race relations and equality in how people are treated due to their skin color in prison, they don't care less. It's a totally different ballgame. It's a totally different world. In prison, it doesn't matter what the rest of the world is doing based on race relations. Prison has its own consequential and unconsequential politics based on race. And depending on where you're located, geographically, depends on how you're going to program inside that particular prison system. Meaning, if you're on the West Coast, it's a different set of rules. If you're on the East Coast, it's a different set of rules. If you're in the Midwest, it's also different. And if you're in the South, it's definitely a different set of rules. So depending on where you are geographically inside the United States prison system or penal institutions, you're going to operate according to however the politics say you're going to operate. You are not going to go inside any prison system and change the racial segregation rules, no matter who you think you are. It's just not going to happen. It's all power plays, and it's based on shot callers. It's based on decades, even centuries old systems that were set in place by convicts long, long ago. And even if it wasn't set in place by convicts, the prison system itself that designed these racial institutions that exist within the walls of prison, it's just the way it is. And you ain't going to change it. Don't think that you're going to be a civil rights activist inside prison, because you're going to get yourself shanked, jigged, and left dead on the ground. And it doesn't matter who you are and how good of a person you think you are or what you're standing up for. Them dudes are going to leave you in a body bag. And they're not going to lose no sleep behind it either, because you ain't going to change nothing. That's just the way it is. And here's the reality of prison racial segregation. On the West Coast, you ain't talking to no one outside of your race when it comes to anything serious. You're not going to be chopping it up with your black homeboy and you white that you used to skateboard with. They're not going to allow it. They're going to ride both of y'all off the yard. The blacks ain't going to allow the black dude to do it, and the whites aren't going to allow the white dude to do it. I have never been inside of a West Coast prison in my life, but we all have watched the movies and we all listen to the YouTube channels. And for me, I've been reading books about prison since I was a teenager. So I've always understood the racial separation inside the West Coast prisons, just from books that I read. Anyway, you're not going to be in a West Coast prison and you're going to be race mixing from all accounts. And if anyone who's watching this video has done time in the West Coast, they can share in the comments. Listen, I make no claim to be someone who understands West Coast prison politics as it pertains to someone who actually been in it, because I haven't been in it. I did all my time in Southern prisons and Louisiana prisons. And I can tell you it's a lot different in the South. When I first got to prison, something that I did not understand was the terminology of the word white boy. That's right, white boy. In the South, a lot of whites are often called white boy from black inmates. What I did not understand was the term white boy did not refer to a white person in the same connotation every time the words white boy were used. Depending on who was using the words white boy and how the words white boy were being told to you or referred to you as was depending on what it actually meant. That's right. The word white boy could be just a response to a person who is white, and the person is just trying to communicate with them and they just calling you white boy based on what they see. You are a man, a boy, and you are Caucasian, white boy. But that's not always the case. Often the term white boy is used as a derogatory term to a Caucasian person. So if somebody says, say white boy, that might be, depending on how they're saying it and who's saying it exactly, like I said, Depends on what they meant by it. A person could say white boy, and they really just want your attention. And you could easily say, look, I'm going to be cool with it or I'm not going to be cool with it. I seen some dudes use the term white boy and they throw it around as the most derogatory term toward white people when this happens in the South. Southern prisons, that's where we're at now. You got to keep that in mind. Geographically speaking is going to be on how this stuff operates. On the West Coast, I'm assuming, I do not know for certain, that they probably don't use the term white boy because the woods or the whites on the West Coast, have a political structure that whoever's in their organization or within their ethnic group already understand that they're not going to allow nobody to disrespect them as a group or as individuals. But in the South, in Southern prisons, even though you may have a group of friends or a group of people you hang out with, often you are going to have to stand up on your own before anyone even thinks about standing up for you. You have to be willing to fight by yourself. You might be a coyote, it don't matter. And I'm using the analogy of animals in the wild because I think it's a good analogy for prison. Have you ever seen a group of coyotes? They'll work together in tangent to take down pretty much all kind of things or defend themselves even against a larger animal such as a bear. Or, a bobcat that might be by itself. When the coyotes work together, they work fine. But a coyote will also play games if it's by itself, like it's hurt and injured, to lure its victim away. So we use the analogy like coyotes. For instance, if you're a coyote in prison, you could do whatever strategy you want, but you got to be willing to fight for yourself if you get backed in that corner. Like a wild dog backed in the corner, you got to fight. So if you're a white person and somebody backs you in the corner and tries to take advantage of you because they think you're white based off of your skin color, then you do need to fight back. That's just a reality. If you don't fight back, chances are the person that's calling you white boy. And listen, black dudes will even tell you, they will admit that they are often looking for a weaker white dude to take advantage of, whether that is to take advantage of him for monetary purposes because they're broke and indigent and they recognize that the white person might have a family member who loves them and cares for them, such as a wife, a mom, dad, or multiple family members who care for them, and they come from an affluent area and they're going to be getting money put on their books so they can make canteen and make the prison stay a little more comfortable. Well, the black dude is going to get friendly Bob with them just so they can, bum off of them and become friends with them so they can have something for themselves. This is just a reality. I'm telling you the strategies that take place. And I'm going to go back to when I was 19 years old and I got in the cell with probably one of my best people, my best rounds, my best homeboy, best homie, whatever you want to say it. My celly Snoop from Slidell. He was a white dude, and by the time I got to prison, he went to prison, adult prison, when he was like 16 years old. And he was no pushover, he wasn't no chump. He was fighting. So by the time I made it to prison, he had already been in prison about 3 or 4 years. And he did like 20 years in prison. They had armed robbery charge. Anyway, I wound up in a cell with him. I'm 19. He schools me on a lot of stuff that I didn't know. So when I get in there, he says, say, man, yeah, you got to watch out for these black dudes. He said, I'm cool with a lot of them, bro. I handle my business. We down and everything. He said, but you got to be looking out for them. He said, look, when I was in the parish jail, he was in St. Tammany Parish Jail. He said he got real cool with a black dude. I think he was 16 years old on armed robbery charge in St. Tammany Parish. And he's in the parish jail and he's cool with this black dude. They really cool. And the dude was, probably roughly the same age as when he was on one of those wild juvenile pods where they put younger dudes on violent charges and they all going to the state prisons anyway. So him and the dude are cool. He said, say, man, when you get up the road, bro, I'm going to tell you something, man. Be careful, Snoop. And he said, what you mean be careful? He said, man, look, I know me and you are cool. He said, but when you get up that road, he said, man, he said, my people, black people, he said, we don't mean you no well. He said, most black dudes, he said, I ain't gonna say all of them. He said, but just to be sure, man, be careful. He said, because black dudes are just looking for reasons to misuse white people. You know what I mean? That's the way it is in prison, man. So I'm giving you a heads up because you my dog. And I know you about your business and you good people. And Snoop's telling me the story. And I'm like, yeah, that's what he told you. He said, yeah, my round told me. He said, man, when you get up the road, man, watch out for them black dudes, man. They got booty bandits and all that. And they're looking for the young white dude. He said, so I got up here, you know what I mean? I started busting these dudes in the mouth as soon as they came at me, talking about, say, white boy. Boom, 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 boom. Snoop was banging them up. So Snoop put me on my game. And so, obviously I started fighting too. So if you're a white person and you're in prison and somebody calls you white boy, well, you know what time it is. You better be able to decipher it real quick. And somebody comes at you with that slick talking game. Because the reality is nowadays in prison system, even back in the 90s when I was doing my time, into the early 2000s, dudes were still using psychological warfare to talk you out of your manhood or talk you out of your canteen or use and abuse you any way they can. They will do whatever they can to get your sister to write them. Or they will do whatever they can to get your wife to write them. Now, political structure inside prisons does determine a lot that can help races who are outnumbered like whites. That's right. In a lot of prisons, especially southern prisons, whites are outnumbered by like probably 18 to 1, 19 to 1 or something like that. There are a lot more blacks inside the Louisiana prison system than there are whites. And I've been in prisons where I've been in dormitories where for every one white, there might have been 30 blacks. And that was just a reality. And being a white dude that was in those dormitories and in those pods, you had to be about your business and stand up for yourself if you was going to make it and thrive as a white person in there. Either that or you're going to be a victim. You ain't got to be the sharpest tool in the shed, or you ain't got to be the baddest person on the block. Now, I've seen some white people who are the baddest person on the block, and I'm going to link a description to a video of a white dude who was about everything. He walked the walk and he talked the talk, and he backed it up, not just with his words, but with his fist. And most other people just stayed out his way, and he was going to use whatever word he wanted to use, including the N-word, hard N-word. Heard him do it in prison, seen him get in a fight with a lot of dudes who were black and he was white. And I'll leave a link to that video in the description and at the end of this video. And it'll probably shock you if you watch it. You'll probably either be offended or impressed with this dude. I don't know, or somewhere in between. But being a white person in prison is not an easy thing. That's why the West Coast has that structure. The structure's set up so that whites that go in prison have a system that protects them. I don't necessarily agree or support or even like all the political strategies that they use in West Coast prisons, but I doggone sure respect it because they set up a system to where the whites, when they get in prison, no black person is going to come at them. And I know for like Spanish people, depending on where the Spanish people are located, some of them are going to side with the whites and some of them are going to side with the blacks, or it goes back and forth. So that's a different topic. But even the Spanish people stick with the Spanish people, So it's all racial segregation, man. That's just the way it is, man. That's the way it is in prison. You might not like it, but that's the way it is, and it's always been. And in southern prisons, to be called white boy is something you need to be careful of because it might be a derogatory term. Listen, every time somebody called me white boy, I didn't get off on them. I got called white boy a lot of times, and I didn't fight every time somebody did that. I just fought to defend myself, and I wasn't going to become a victim to some predator in prison. But I didn't know that in the beginning. I'm going to share stories on my channel about times where I had to fight because, my very manhood was at stake, or my very comfortability in prison, because you try to make it as comfortable as you can in prison. And if I didn't fight, it would have been uncomfortable because they would have been stealing from me all the time. And I got stolen from in prison twice. Out of the 10 years I've done in prison, I had things stolen from me twice. And I didn't know who took it. So I didn't get in a fight behind it because they stole it from me. And that's a whole, video for another time. But for racial segregation, the term white boy, and let me tell you something else about black dudes. They drop derogatory terms all day long, constantly using the word snow bunny. Say, give me a white bee, give me a snow bunny when I get out there. And I mean, the white girls, this is the conversation you hear constantly. And listen, ain't nobody going to do nothing like I said, because by and large, in Louisiana prisons, blacks outnumber whites by a large pace. Now, here's the thing, though, about southern prisons in Louisiana. If a white dude handles his business, and chances are he might even be cool with a lot of the black dudes because he grew up with them on the street. He rip and ran in the neighborhood with them. He did capers and dirt with them. So they're going to rock with him and ride with him no matter what. So he might be able to say and do what he wants. And that's what surprises a lot of people about the South. It's just different. In the prison system, it's different. I'm going to give you a good example. In junior high, I had a black friend. Me and this dude would hang out all the time. And we hung out while we were in school, and we hung out on the weekends on the streets. This is back in the late 80s, early 90s. And when we hung out, we would do all kind of stuff, you know. This is before cell phones. You would go out, you call each other, say, hey, look, we're going to meet here. Or during school, before the weekend came, you'd be like, look, meet me at the store, the corner store. We'd meet at the corner store, and we'd rip and run the streets, you know, till whenever. Anyway, we get back to school. And at the end of school, as I'm getting on the school bus, all of a sudden, I get punched right in my face. Boom! And I'm like, dang, man, I look, and I'm shocked. Dude just punched me right in my face. And when I look at who it was my same friend who I considered one of my great friends. And I'm like, why'd he punch me? He just punched me. I looked at him, and then he ran. Well, the bus driver saw it. The chaperones, the other teachers who were putting people, a bunch of them saw it. They saw me get punched. They asked me, was I okay? They went and got him. It was at the end of the day. They said, you okay? We're going to deal with this tomorrow. They put me on the bus. I come back to school the next day. I'm sitting in the office. They bring him in the office. I'm already there. They trying to figure out what happened. And I'm sitting in a chair, and he walks in, and the principal asked him, they said, well, why'd you hit me? And he looked at the principal. He said, oh, man. He said, it wasn't personal. He said, just all white boys were getting snuck in them days. And I looked at him like, wait, what? He's like, yeah, man, we was just picking random white boys and just punching them. And even in junior high, I went to a school where it was mostly blacks and then whites and then Vietnamese. And that's pretty much what they had. But I got snuck. He admitted, and this is in the early 90s, he admitted that he punched me, his own friend, for the simple fact that I was white. Well, I wasn't the only white to get punched. There was other whites who got punched too. And I was more shocked because I got punched by my friend that I didn't respond. I didn't do anything. I froze because I was like, why did he just hit me? You know, I was more, my feelings were hurt. Well, my cousin who went to school with me too, he got punched. Well, he was a scrapper. And he went to prison, too. He'd been to juvenile detention. Everybody knows him. And he got in a fight. I remember watching him because I wasn't the only one who got punched. He got punched, and he started fist fighting back with the dude who punched him. Well, there was a couple other white dudes, and they started fighting back, too. But there was a handful of us that didn't do anything. I was one of the ones who didn't do nothing, not because I got punched, but because it was who punched me? My friend. And I didn't know what was going on. But then they admitted that they targeted whites that particular day to punch a bunch of blacks. And some of the whites fought back. And some didn't. I was one that didn't because I was shell-shocked. You know what I mean? So fast forward to prison, it's the same thing. Whites got to be careful on who they associate with the black dudes in jail because you got to make sure that there's nothing attached to it. Racism exists from blacks just as much as it does from whites. But this video is already long enough. And if you watched to this point, I want to say, thanks for watching and welcome to the Pen and The Shank, the most unusual and unique crime and prison channel experience on YouTube. Hit that bell notification. Give me a like and subscribe so you can keep up with all the different stuff I got coming out. We cover different topics on the Pen and The Shank than the other prison and crime channels. I approach a lot of different topics and a lot of different angles. And if you want something different, then you're in the right place. If you want unusual and unique, you're in the right place. I'm going to give you a different take on things as well and cover different crime stories. And I'm telling you about characters in prison you never heard about. And stories, I'm talking about the mundane and the unusual from prison, not just the regular gang fights that people are interested in. So give me a like and subscribe. And I got part 2 of this coming out soon, where we're going to keep talking about this racial segregation and race relations inside prisons. Man, let's get it.